Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Shelf of Many Things, where I take a look at small press and independent role-playing games and role-playing game accessories. This time I'm taking a look at Over War, The Night Comes Down, Monarch Edition, from Black Oath Entertainment. They were kind enough to send me a review copy. It is available in both PDF and print from Drive-Thru RPG, and honestly this is another one that has been sitting around for a while that I should have looked at some time ago. Over War, The Night Comes Down, Monarch Edition is a remaster of a gothic fantasy role-playing strategy game that was initially released back in 2022, so it's a couple years old now. This new version adds additional tables, resources, lore, GM tools, as well as solo player support. It also includes content from the Fraternization and Fortresses, Roads of Caer Elwyn, the Gerlach Woods, and Lake Crescent expansions. The initial game has you mustering your forces and going against various invaders, and inspired by such things as Fire Emblem, Yggdra Union, Langrisser, and various works by Yasumi Matsuno, so a tabletop game with a strategy RPG feel. As always, I will go over the book in brief, cover each section in a little bit more detail, and then give my thoughts on the system at the end. This review will, of course, be based on the PDF version. The PDF version comes in at about 98 pages with a full-color cover, a black and white interior with a 2-column layout, nicely set up headings, and occasional inline black and white line artwork. As far as content goes, there are 5 major interior sections, most of which are subdivided into an additional 17 subsections. There is a world of Gothic conflict, which sets the overall tone of the game. Playing the game, which is divided into creating your own commander, unit characters, navigating maps and hexes, combat, the divination deck, provisions, repute, downtime, and advancement. Then there is playing without a Grand Marshal, which is divided into patrolling a region, random scenario generator, and random objective generator. Running the game simply has the making a new character subsection. Finally, the scenarios offers the scenarios of the campaign for Estwald, the Roads of Caer Elwyn, the Gerlach Woods, and Lake Crescent. In more detail, A World of Gothic Horror sets the setting in the year 1472 in some fictional land of Balark. It has armies descending from a floating island, or a group of floating islands, to head through the countryside. You start as a minor commander who has now gained control of a small band of combatants. There's an overview of the Balark area, and then a description of the geography divided into broad sectors. The peoples of Balark details the various human and non-human beings that are present within the land, divided neatly into gaming-style categories. There is a description of the Outer Night, or the Overnight, which are a set of floating islands in the sky above Balark. A description of the daily life of Balark, which sets it firmly into a late medieval styling. Magic is available, it's well known, but it's not necessarily a super high fantasy setting. There are a set of common beliefs, whether religious, philosophy, or otherwise, that are within the various populations of Balark, as well as descriptions of the major types of religious institutions. The playing the game section starts with What is a Tabletop RPG, which details things that a tabletop RPG are defined as. It's set up in a broader manner than the usual just what is an RPG kind of thing, especially where this idea applies to Overworld or Overwar, in which players take on the roles of both commanders and their units, because that's a distinct type of thing from what you'd usually encounter in a tabletop role-playing game. For the purposes of Overwar, the one that runs the game is considered the Grand Marshal, abbreviated, of course, GM. There are also mention of playing the game without a GM. Playing Overwar requires not only the usual paper, pencils, and dice, but also a deck of cards, either a tarot deck or a standard set of cards. Rules for creating a commander follow. There's a brief description of the tags, which are innate properties of a commander. All commanders begin with the authority tag, and then pick one more, which basically determines what type of commander they are, whether they're human, various non-humans such as arcane, beasts, divine, etc. The commander history then follows with a table to generate the commander's origin, which you can either roll or pick from. The next table determines why your soldiers follow you, which can be very important for inspiration. Commanders begin with some default stats, a flat number of hit points, a basic attack, and a basic movement set. You can then divide 7 skill points amongst a set of various skills, all of which start at 0. The final section is to choose 2 different bonuses from a list of simple bonuses that can affect your character's stats, skills, or more. This can include various trait bonuses that can grant special abilities. A few of these abilities are truly impressive, mostly those dealing with necromancy or undead type commanders, and they take up both of the initial 2 slots. Although relatively brief, these various bonuses can make you able to create a wide variety of different commander types. The skills section covers how to make skill checks. Skills are used for out-of-combat effects and are basically a 3d6 plus a skill score versus a target number. The skills themselves are then listed thereafter with a brief description of what each one does. Drafting your unit lets you build your starting group of soldiers. You pick some types of characters and then spend draft points to build your unit from individual types of beings. There's a sidebar that describes various common tags there. The basic characters that can be selected for each unit then follow. These are divided up by point cost, with each character given a point cost, a name, a type, a hit point number, a basic attack damage, and then any special effects they can produce. For instance, adepts have the ability to boost skills, dune runners are better when fighting in desert hexes, and so forth. More powerful characters have higher point costs, up to a few that require 4 of the initial 5 basic points. There is a similar set of advanced characters, similar to the basic characters. These are divided by point cost. They have hit points of the various values the others ones do, but also have special abilities that are far more elaborate than the basic characters do. There appear to be quite a bit of these more advanced character types than the basic ones, far more of them, that gives a lot more variety. The subsection also includes assembling your units into a formation towards the end. See how many of those special ones were. Anyway, yes, assembling your unit into a formation details front and back rows, rows with each having 3 columns for a total of 6 potential character spaces. So, if you're familiar with computer and console strategy RPGs, then yeah, you see where this is coming from. Navigating maps and hexes follows. It gives rules for moving through various hexes and what those hexes can contain. Activating units gives rules for taking control of and moving a particular unit. There is a basic rule for cycling maps between night and day, a description of the various types of terrain hexes, and what limits and adjustments they impose follows. There are rules for capturing settlements which appear as a hex type, as well as what happens when you do so. This may require drawing a card from a divination deck to be described later. Restoring units covers how units heal. Generally, they have to be on a hex that's flagged as restorative or forgo movement in order to heal 1 hit point. They may also be healed by the use of certain characters, the use of provisions, or the effects of certain divination cards. There's guidelines for reorganizing and restructuring the units within. Restructuring requires a friendly settlement hex for you to do it. There's also some discussion of inhabited hexes. These can produce specific types of characters even when they are not unlocked. The combat rules start with an idea of who acts first. This is determined by character positioning rather than any random roll. There are rules on targeting based on the character's attack flags. If it doesn't match that character's attack flags, then they determine their target based on their positioning. Play proceeds by alternating turns, with one side acting with one character and then the other side acting with another character. The section on acting, and dealing damage, and being knocked out follows. Damage is applied to a character's hit points, and when they are reduced to 0, they are knocked out and can no longer act. Nor do they provide any bonuses to their commander or unit. Knocked out also prevents healing until they have recovered, usually by visiting a settlement or using certain provisions or divination cards. Victory points and retreating determines win conditions. Characters gain victory points and when they knock out enemies or enemy commanders, and the side with the least victory points is then forced to retreat. Rules for where the unit can retreat are listed, with enemy units suffering a harsher penalty than player units. Disbanding will happen when a unit has no characters with greater than 0 hit points, and there is consideration given towards allowing a player to take control of an enemy faction or neutral unit if they have their own unit removed from the game, just so they can, continue to play. Orders are options that can be taken before combat starts that effectively modify how a unit will act in combat. These generally provide you a bonus or penalty to damage taken or damage received from particular kinds of attacks or allow things like a second attack or bonus against a particular row. The Divination deck determines how to use the cards, detailed in the requirements to play. Divination cards are gained by capturing settlements and other sources during play and may be spent at any time during battle. Divination cards can carry over between scenarios and provide a long-term bonus, or at least a chance thereof. Each of the cards described in a tarot deck have various effects, from dealing damage to healing to special effects, and are detailed over this page. This is followed by a list of provisions that you can pick up, which are consumable items used in a single scenario. They range from healing to providing a bonus of damage and so forth. Repute determines how a particular commander is seen by the people of Monarch. It can go negative or positive depending on whether a commander has a negative or positive reputation, but is capped at 10 points on either side. There are downtime rules which, while not mandatory, can be used to progress a story. These include various conversations that one can have with characters within a unit, so if you're used to the party banter in a strategy RPG, well, that's in there. Advancement is used to improve characters as well as the unit itself between scenarios. There are two versions. The simple advancement offers a menu of bonuses or changes that can be undertaken between scenarios. Then the complex advancement offers a war camp, which may be upgraded by building various things like alchemical workbenches, expanding supply lines, and so forth. These provide bonuses that can be used during a scenario. These can also allow for improving the commander themselves. The next major section details playing without a Grand Marshal. It starts by introducing the idea of a GM-less play as well as solo play. There are rules for activating non-player units, as well as determining both random characters within a unit that can be targeted, as well as target numbers for skill checks. There is a yes or no oracle, which can provide the answer to questions regarding a scenario or storyline progression, as well as complications that can be introduced. A set of theme and action tables follow that can be used to flesh out particular events, as well as both a random provision generator and a random unit generator to produce things on the field. There is a random character generator that can be used to generate non-combat details of various characters that you encounter, and then a random map generator can be used to determine the various hexes within a map complete with terrain and various traits. Patrolling a region gives rules for either GM-less play or for designing scenarios as a GM without time to prepare a session properly. It starts with the same idea of making a map, but lets you generate it based off of a road hex, then generates some random enemy units and gives options for engaging them. There are also random events that can take place, including potential dangers that you can run into while navigating the region. There's a chart for a random settlement generator that you can place within, place various settlements within your map. This is followed by a random scenario generator, which produces a more thorough scenario organization. It starts by using the random map and random unit generation to produce a map and units to face. Then starts with players at a set position, designates certain hexes as enemy spawn points that can generate units as needed. A random objective generator is described that can produce the various details of the win conditions of a scenario, or whether it's a skirmish, full-on conquest, or an escape, or escort mission, so forth. Basically your quest generation. This section on running the game follows with information useful for the GM. There's some basic background on how you can take inspiration from tactical games and real-time strategy games, or even board games. There's information on creating a map and the pool of units, as well as win conditions. More specifically, there are guidelines on deciding what happens when certain traits interact with one another based on how they affect the individual in question, and when there is a custom character creation process where you can make new characters that players can add to their units, with everything from damage to targeting to traits detailed therein, as well as how many build points they take. So you can customize what troops are available to your group. The final main section of the book details a group of scenarios. The campaign for Estwald gives us a group of starting information on the region, the description of the difficulty in terms of how many units are to be expected to take place. There's also a map with some keyed points of interest, with each hex detailed as well as their effects, how to set up a map, how to distribute the enemy forces, and then guidelines for playing that particular scenario. The next three scenarios are pretty much described the same way. There's Roads of Caer Elwyn, taking place in an ancient territory, the Gerlach Woods, which takes place in a forested region, and then Lake Crescent takes place around a lake. Wow, okay. So that, all in all, is Overwar, Monarch Edition, of course. So what do I think about it? Well, I enjoyed the presentation. It's very similar to other material from Black Oath, even though it is a system that is more of a war game than a role-playing game. I do appreciate the nods to the inspiration material, which is definitely on point and keeps the game relatively well in theme. I didn't see anything in terms of technical presentation to really note, at least in a critical sense. The text and writing is very easy to follow. The formatting is good. It's understandable. I didn't run into anything that threw me off throughout. I haven't really played around a lot with unit creation rules, but everything else seemed to flow relatively quickly when I tested it, and was easy to set up and use with a quick skirmish, at the very least. I will say that this is definitely suited for more short-term campaigns or very specific groups. Maybe a few play sessions rather than extended role-playing game campaign. I could see how one could string quite a few of these together in a manner similar to one of the strategy RPG listed as inspiration. Although I will admit that, at least for me, the combat would eventually get a little bit old after a few scenarios. Then again, I just spent like nearly a month playing Unicorn Overlord nonstop, so take that as you will. This is definitely just a personal preference as that, but I'm willing to admit that's my personal preference, and your mileage may vary. If you very much like figuring all that out by hand, then, you know, this is the game. This is pretty much the game for you. I find it interesting the way that the rules were designed to preserve the feel of classic strategy RPGs from a console or computer, while still maintaining a certain degree of quick resolution. If nothing else, Overwar can provide a very nice midpoint between a classic role-playing game and a war game for those groups who are trying to branch out and try other things. Would I recommend it over similar offerings? Yeah, honestly, most RPG and wargame hybrids that I've seen tend towards a little bit more complexity than this one, while this one gears itself towards quick setup and play with easily understood tropes. It can be a very good introduction to such tabletop RPG wargaming hybrids with the usual high quality that Black Oath Entertainment has begun to bring to its products, and I can appreciate that. With that, I'm going to wrap this up here. As always, I will put links to where you can get it below. This has been the RPG Crawler with my look at Overwar Monarch Edition. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, commenting out your feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.
And if you are still watching, I would like to take the opportunity to thank my supporters, the top tiers of which are listed on the screen, without whose support I would not have been able to offer the variety of content that I have on this channel throughout the years. If you're feeling particularly generous and would like to join them, you can support the channel. There are a variety of options to do so. I have a Patreon, a Subscribestar, as well as channel memberships enabled. If you are not in a position to contribute, simply leaving a like, a comment, or sharing my videos are all wonderful ways to help the channel grow without spending a dime, and are all greatly appreciated.